everyone, it's Taylor here, and today I'm excited to share with you one of my favorite ways to create sets of note cards to bulk up my own stash of cards or to give as gifts. I'm starting with one of our stencils, and I love to use stencils on note card sets. They're quick and easy. You can see on the corners of our stencils we have etched copyright tailored expressions with our item number. That's how you know that's the front of the stencil, and that's the side you want to be able to read those details as you're adding the ink blending onto your cardstock. I have here a piece of sugar cube cardstock, and I am going to put that down on my placemat and then center my stencil over the top. I'll be holding that in place with some of my very favorite new thin Thermoweb purple tape. I love the thin tape because I was always ripping the thicker tape in half, feeling like I was being a little wasteful with that thick tape. So now this is what I love to use my thin purple tape for. We'll be using 4 colors on this project: Lollipop and Lemon Meringue, and Cookie Monster, and finishing with Jelly Donut. I'm starting with Lollipop here, and I'm just going to ink across the top of the project, first off on my placemat to get rid of those intense bits of color that you get straight from the ink pad. I'm going in with yellow next, and I'm overlapping the pink slightly because pink and yellow make orange. As I continue on with the Cookie Monster, I'm going to again overlap the Lemon Meringue because yellow and blue make green. So last, I'm finishing with the Jelly Donut, which is a nice grape purple color at the bottom. And my favorite part is the reveal, so here is the beautifully rainbow stenciled background. Next, I'm going to share how I create several sentiment strips using our Simple Strips background stamp. Now, this was designed to work with a coordinating die, but I'd like to share with you how I use the My Sweet Petunia cut-a-line ruler to cut these strips apart. The cut-a-line ruler comes with 2 rulers in the set. There's an 8-inch ruler and a 15-inch ruler. I'll be using the 8-inch ruler for this. I'm starting with my stamp. You can see those alignment squares along the side. Now that's to line up with the die, which we won't be using for this particular set of note cards. I'm placing the stamp in my MISTI and inking it with Oreo ink. After closing the lid to stamp that on my Sugar Cubes cardstock, I will take that piece of cardstock out of the MISTI, and we are going to use a paper trimmer just to cut off those alignment squares. Because we're using the cut-a-line ruler, we don't need those squares. I'll be using a fingertip craft knife from Fiskars to cut these apart. Really like the control that I get from this. You want to make sure that you hold it perpendicular to your cutting surface as opposed to dragging it straight across. You can shave some of the plastic of your ruler if you're not holding the knife correctly. So here you can see, if I hold it up against the back of my paper, there are several lines printed on the ruler. So you can decide how far of a distance you want between your sentiment and the edge of your paper. I'm going to be using that very thinnest line, making sure that it is lined up all the way across my stamped sentiment. As long as you have it lined up straight, as you run your knife through the opening in the ruler, it will cut it perfectly straight. So I'm holding that down with one hand and then sliding my knife across to cut that edge off. Then I'm going to flip my ruler around to the other side and line up along that same line that I used on the opposite side to make sure that those are even cuts on both sides. And I'm going to cut then down through that opening in the ruler and create a perfect stripped sentiment. Now you can continue on and do this with the rest of the cutting plate, and you will end up with 18 different sentiments that you can put on many different cards. I'm going to finish this set of cards up. I have several stenciled backgrounds that I did, and I also cut a black layer to mat behind my sentiment, and you can do that very easily with the cut-a-line ruler as well. And now it's just a matter of finishing these cards up with my favorite Scotch removable adhesive. I also wanted to mention that it could be a really fun option to leave the sentiments off of the stenciled panels and simply send this as a gift with sentiments that your recipient can choose as they are needed. So if they need a baby card, they can use a baby sentiment. If they need sending a big hug, they can use that. And it would make a great gift for someone who maybe is not a crafter but loves to send handmade cards to be able to decide exactly what sentiment they need. I am popping up the panel, the stenciled panel, onto card bases, and then I end up with 4 beautifully rainbow colored cards and lots of extra sentiments. And now I have a second set of note cards using our Birds and Blooms stencil and the coordinating simple strips die to cut out those sentiments. I'll be focusing on the blend on this purple card, but I will share all the blends for the other 3 cards on the Tailored Expressions blog. Again, we're starting with our stencil, and I'm showing you that you can see the etched copyright and item number so that you know which side is up on the stencil. We're using the thin purple tape again to tape down the sides of the stencil. I'm starting with Lavender Glaze ink. I will move to Jelly Donut, and then our darkest purple is Eggplant. Off to the side, I'm cleaning my brush by just rubbing it across my cardstock before I start with the lightest color of ink. Moving on to the Jelly Donut, I am adding a light color and heavy-handed as I get closer to the bottom, and the same with that Eggplant. The Eggplant is such a beautiful deep purple. I just love how that purple turned out, and I'm not usually a fan of purple. We have now our simple strips background, and this time we are going to use those alignment squares. I'm going to be inking this with Versamark, and so I need to clean my stamp first. I have one of the Tailored Expressions cleaning cloths here, which I love. It is a microfiber cloth and it's lint free, so you just spritz some of our cleaner on there and it cleans it up perfect. I'll be stamping onto Oreo cardstock using Versamark, and after I've set this up in my MISTI, I need to first condition my cardstock so that the embossing powder only sticks where I want it to. I'll close that lid to stamp the Versamark down, and then I can use my fine detail white embossing powder to cover the entire image. Now my little tip is that if you get any flyaway stray pieces, you can use a small detail paintbrush to get those off before you heat emboss it. So next I'm taking my embossing gun and heating that sentiment, making sure I also heat the squares. And then you can take your Tailored Expressions cloth and wipe the powder off of that black cardstock. I have the die here, and you can see those alignment squares along each side that I'm taping down after I've lined them up and sending through my machine. And you'll see how amazing this is when it comes out, all of those sentiments that you get with one trip through the die cut machine. And now we just have to finish off this card again with my favorite Scotch removable adhesive, and I'm putting a Welcome Little One sentiment just centered on that piece of cardstock. You could choose to give to a recipient again just with the sentiments not adhered, and they could adhere the sentiment that they need at that particular time. So I hope you learned a few new things about these projects and how you can make lots of sets of note cards to give as gifts or to really bulk up your stash. Thanks for tuning in, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel.